Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everybody. I'm Carey Conley, and welcome back to the Moving Through and Beyond podcast. I am honored and blessed that I get to bring you some of the best in the world, some people that are just really thriving and living out their legacy and making an impact. And I'm honored that I today have one of my very good friends who is the founder of LeadHERship Global, which she'll tell you a little bit about, who has had a really amazing life. And, as always, it always looks like, we're thriving, Linda, right? We're super successful. We didn't have anything go wrong in our life. But you've had a lot, my friend. And the more I get to know you, the more you tell me. And I'm just in awe of you. So I appreciate you being here today to tell us a little bit about your background and your story.
Carey, I am honored. I'm honored to be with you. I'm honored to be a part of your podcast. You're right. You have brought some of the biggest, brightest stars, some of the most inspirational stories, some of the most incredibly inspiring leaders that I've ever seen collected on a podcast. So I'm super, super honored to be able to be among them.
Well, you just, like I said, there's so many things you've done, Linda. Like you have multiple degrees. You're an athlete, right? Have launched many businesses very successfully, including LeadHERship Global, which I'm so excited to be a part of. Met some amazing people there. So can I give us just a little bit of early background for you?
Sure. I think, a theme throughout my life is one of grit and grace. And that lesson of trying to balance grit and grace to overcome obstacles started when I was a very young child. I was actually considered to be clinically shy and actually unable to hold eye contact with any stranger. Even when my parents urged me to look someone straight in the eye, shake their hand, and say hello, which most young children are taught to do.
Right.
But I simply couldn't. And over time, I developed a penchant for whispering my words at a pretty uneven rate of speech. And I started repeating my words with a really pronounced stutter. Social settings and high stress environments made it nearly impossible for me to speak. And as I became more and more self-conscious, the tension in my voice made it more and more difficult to utter even a word.
Wow.
So over time, my frustration with my attempts to communicate led to hesitations or a prolonged pause before I started to speak. And by the time I could even utter a word, the conversation already moved on. And over time, it became simply easier to remain quiet. And I will tell you, Carey, by the time I was in high school, I had the nickname Mouse because I was quiet as a mouse.
Yeah.
This type of stuttering that I developed as a very young child carried through all the way to college. And I consciously began to avoid words or sounds or situations that might involve any kind of struggle. And so I hid my problem from a lot of other people because I developed a behavioral pattern and a coping mechanism that kept me absolutely vigilant at all times. And I also hid myself. I isolated myself. I created a life that was unfortunately absent of community, absent of really good friends, absent of the opportunity to integrate into society in a more sort of normal way. And so early on, I realized that, for me to be able to create the kind of life that I envisioned in my head, I needed to find a way to effectively manage my stuttering in order to have the life I envisioned for myself. And by college, I knew I wanted to work in advertising and marketing because after years and years of observing people, listening to people, studying people, I had an innate sense of how people seemed to be motivated, what seemed to guide decisions, what persuaded them to make certain choices. After years of being quiet, being reserved, and watching the behaviors of my classmates, I started to really understand how people became charismatic, persuasive, magnetic, But I also knew that a career in advertising and marketing meant that I had to be able to present ideas. I had to be persuasive. I had to be
Right.
convincing. And I had to get over my stuttering. So, although it took 4 years, dozens of public speaking classes, speech therapy, and counseling, I graduated college having competed in several public speaking contests and actually winning 4 national competitions.
So
And
listen,
from that first public speaking course, when I literally fainted in front of a classroom of 25 fellow students, to graduation when I could present to an auditorium of 500 people, that was a case in both grit and grace. And in my mind, that's really been a theme in my life ever since.
Linda, so like I said earlier, every time I talk to you, I learn more about you. I've never heard that story. I've never heard the story about you growing up being so shy and stuttering and not being able to talk to people. Because I see you in Leadership Global, and all we do is speak to each other. You connect people. You've done a TEDx talk. I mean, this is amazing because even people who don't have that debilitating shyness would faint in a speech class. So, what do you think drove you to keep moving past that and to want to get better?
It's this idea of grit for me, Carrie.
Mm,
Grit was evident in my resolve and my stamina to reach what seemed to me to be a seemingly impossible goal based on achieving the life I envisioned for myself. And grace was needed along that journey to accept my limitations, my incredibly slow progress, and my setbacks. And so I will tell you, after graduation, I went back to my undergraduate university. I visited the professor that literally picked me off the floor after passing out in her classroom. And I will never forget that afternoon. Um, that professor said, I've never witnessed such a dramatic way of getting out of giving a speech. And she kind of laughed.
yeah,
But you came back for the second class and the third and the fourth. And I don't think it became easier for you that first semester, but you were determined. And she said, I've never seen such tenacity.
mm,
And so, I think that that is grit because of my passion to achieve that long term objective of being in advertising and marketing, to create a life that I envisioned for myself. I
right.
was absolutely committed. I had a perseverance of effort, even when that effort led to incredibly painful, embarrassing, or humbling experiences. And it's that kind of mental toughness that's often described as grit. And I think that that is one of the most important determinants of success, is to understand that in every single area of growth, from your education to your career to your athletic training, it's your level of mental toughness and determination that actually begins to accurately predict your level of achievement. In fact, I think that grit is a more reliable and accurate indicator of future success than any other determinant. It's
Mm.
more, it's a better predictor of success than IQ, EQ, natural talent, skill. Having grit is important because it's a driver of achievement and success, well beyond whatever skill and knowledge you provide.
And you used my favorite word in describing what got you through is an envisioning a future, a better future than what you were dealing with in the moment. And this is totally what I love talking about. I share with people all the time all the things, the what I call the walls that I hit. Um, my own personal growth and professional growth, and how I got through every wall was the vision of what I wanted for my life and for myself and who I wanted to become was bigger than the wall. And I think this is a key thing with the grit is that you've got to have a vision you want so bad. You will pick yourself literally up off the floor, Linda Fisk.
Exactly.
Right?
And so if
Yeah.
you're dedicated to achieving that very clear long term goal and you are steadfast in your pursuit, you're undeterred by the sacrifices that are required or the setbacks you may experience or even the failures along the way. To me, that is mental toughness and grit. And it's
Right.
absolutely so important. Listen, we may have all the talents, abilities, and expertise to achieve greatness, but without determination, resilience, perseverance, success is going to be elusive. The good
Right.
news, though, is that grit can be taught, it can be developed over time with practice. And it's very much what you talk about, Carey. I think it's about adopting a growth mindset. It's
Right.
about developing the ability to persevere, so that you can start seeing gains in achievement. And with those little wins, you can multiply those into big wins. But
So
you have
true.
to have the tenacity to pursue a goal, knowing that you have the ability to improve over time. Listen, no one is going to stand up and be an overnight, you know, public speaking success. You have to allow for the kind of stamina needed to achieve a long term goal. And so the key is to recognize your natural talents, intelligence, and giftedness as simply, in my mind, it's kind of unmet potential. But with the application of persistent practice, you can achieve higher and higher levels of success.
Right. And I love how you're bringing up the fact, Linda, that it took you 4 years, right? We live in a world right now that people feel like if they don't see results like in 30 days, that something's wrong, that they've
Exactly.
failed, they don't have, like you said, the right resources, the right talent. And that is so not true. It took me a
That's right.
long time to achieve the goals that I've achieved. And the way that I have stuck with it is like you and I are both saying, is that we wanted it. So we were going to envision it, and we're going to just see every obstacle as something that we're going to get up over so what we can get better.
Absolutely. And, that's true in athletic pursuits, academic pursuits, in your career, in your personal development. As you noted, I was a runner
Right.
for a long time. I ran long distance while I was in middle school. Then I ran track when I was in high school, which led to a scholarship in college for running. And then after college, I ran triathlons, marathons. I was nationally ranked athlete for my age range. Being a female, I was nationally ranked for marathons and triathlons year over year over year. But I tell you, that does not come without a lot of tenacity. Running is one of those sports where you simply have to put in the miles. And
Right.
there are some days that you're going to do great. There are other days where it is going to be everything you can do to just put on those running shoes. And while I am absolutely convinced that incorporating the tenets of grit into your approach, no matter if it's athletic or academic or career, it's absolutely fundamental in tackling any kind of worthy pursuit. It's fundamental to success. I got to say, it's equally important to embrace the concept of grace. And in this definition of grace, I'm referring to your ability to push towards excellence, but
Right.
leaving room for failure. There were some races I absolutely should have won, but for whatever reason, that particular day, I could not, you know, I could not end the race as well as I had just the week before or the month before.
Hmm.
And I feel like to really unpack the concept of grace, you first have to know and accept your own shortcomings and your failures. You have to accept them. You have to be willing to say, yep, I didn't do as well as I thought I would in that particular race, this particular month, that particular triathlon. But, overall, I can see I'm getting better. Overall, I can see I'm improving. You have to deeply understand the consistent themes in your life that are embedded in your past and woven throughout your story, because they are the keys to your purpose, to your future. You
Right.
have to understand your limitations. You have to understand your mistakes and shortcomings and your failures, and really examine those recurring issues in your life. Carefully examine your past, especially your failures, because that is essential to knowing your value. And then you have to give yourself grace. And
Right.
I will tell you, listen, there's no one that hasn't experienced failure. It's often why successful people actually achieve the remarkable heights of greatness. They learn from their setbacks, they learn from their failures and mistakes, but they get back up, they apply those learnings to their next attempt. And so every single time I didn't do as well as I thought in a particular marathon or triathlon, I will never forget one. I ran the there's a women's marathon in San Francisco. It's the Nike Women's Marathon in San Francisco, and it's all
Mm.
straight up and down hills. And the day that I ran, it was raining, it was freezing, it was like 40 degrees. They had incredibly inclement weather. I ended up tearing a ligament during that race. I still finished, but I didn't do well. And I learned from that experience. I learned from that setback, from that failure, from that mistake, and realized I need to prepare for all weather. I need to, when it gets that cold and that rainy, I need to have something warm on my legs in order to keep that muscle or that
Mhm.
tendon or ligament from actually severing and splitting and tearing. So, the best thing you can do through really difficult times is learn through that experience. I think true great recognizes that lessons are often learned through experiencing the result of a failure, of a bad decision, or
Right.
as a mistake, and then learning from it.
And I see this too often, and I know you do too, Linda, because of the people that you're around, that they are afraid to make any move in any direction because of the fear of not doing it right or failing at it. And what we're talking about here that you and I have both learned, as a matter of fact, I just came off of a retreat where we talked about this a lot, about not even seeing, it's not really failing. I mean, what you're doing is you're trying something out, it didn't work. So what? You learn from it, move on, right? Failure is just lessons in life. That's all it is. And I love that you are bringing that up and you're helping people change that perspective. I think our young adults really struggle with this a lot, Linda, around
That's right.
perfectionism.
And I will tell you, grace does not remove the consequences. It doesn't protect you from your bad decisions, but rather than stopping you in its tracks, it allows for the recognition of the mistake, the
Right,
forgiveness of the failure, and the resilience to begin incorporating the learning into our forward progress.
right.
Listen, as you know, I also in my adult years have experienced a whole series of health challenges, right?
Mhm,
And so through those series of health challenges, I had a choice. I could either allow that to stop me in my tracks. I could allow that to sort of say, okay, well, there's no way to get around this, over it, under it. I
mm,
can't move around this. So I'm just going to stop. Or it can allow for the recognition that something has really changed and then the resilience to incorporate the learning of that change, the
right,
learning of my sort of reset in terms of what is available to me in terms of exercise and diet and things like that. It allows me to accept that reset and then begin to focus on forward progress within my new normal. So I have a new normal now. And for those that are listening in, just to be super forthright, while I was running marathons and triathlons, I had a series of really sort of strange symptoms, and it was manifesting in my running, and I really wasn't sure what was going on. I went to a doctor, and long story short, I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. My pancreas had died. I was
mm,
also diagnosed with what's called Hashimoto's disease, which essentially just means my thyroid died. And fast forward about 6 months, and I also went through a series of three reconstructive back surgeries. I now have two rods and 86 screws from my neck down to my tailbone. And so, again, those things could have stopped me in my tracks. But what I tried to do was accept the new normal, incorporate the learning, and focus on my forward progress within that new normal. And I feel
right,
like that entire experience was grace embodied. It's an attitude, it's a characteristic, it's a belief. And as such, it can have a contagious effect on others, including the people around you. If you get stuck, they become stuck. But if
right,
you have a sense of grace towards yourself and others, if you embody grace and you absolutely integrate that attitude, that characteristic, that belief in every single decision and every single step forward, then it becomes contagious. But I tell you, grace starts with you. It starts by clearly understanding your life story, including your consistent themes. It understands the limitations in your life. And then it encourages you to make a conscious decision to still push towards excellence, leaving room for failure.
right. Wow, such good stuff, Linda. You are, again, you're somebody that somebody would look at you and think, this woman has no problems, no issues, is super successful. You've built an amazing community that I want you to talk about in a minute, but you've given us some really great things to think about. And obviously, I think between you and I, because I've been through tough stuff too, and the audience knows that here, there's a couple of things that have just really pulled you and I through everything. So are there two things that you just want to mention to everybody that that even on your worst days, Linda, because we're transparently going to say, we're not always like gung ho, let's do this. There are days that you're thinking, this is
It's
not
tough.
today. Yeah. So a
It's
couple
tough.
of things that you can share that just no matter what, just get you through.
Yep. Number one, I think you have to know your value. And you have to know that your failure does not define you. In fact, failures are the very building blocks that make you stronger or more valuable. But you have to begin thinking positively of yourself.
Right.
Even though you will inevitably fall short of your own expectations for yourself, you have to make amends to not only those you hurt, but to yourself. You have to
Yeah.
be able to forgive yourself and know that you can and will do better if you allow yourself to. And this gives you the ability to push other people towards success as well, while you allow them to make mistakes. So, after all, people allowed us to learn some of our greatest lessons through failure. And then you have the opportunity to give that gift to others as
Yeah.
well.
So
And
good.
for me, a lot of my value is based on knowing that I am a child of God. I am a child of the Most High, creator of the universe. And if he feels as though I am worthy to be adopted into his family, then how can I ever doubt my value? For me, my faith is what keeps me going, because I know that God loves me, that he is cheering me on, that he wants the best for me, that he sees me as valuable. He sees me as being a part of his family. And so, because of my faith, I think positively of myself, because I have been chosen by the creator of the universe, by my Lord and Savior, to do something of impact in this world. He has placed me in this life right now at this designated time and place to be on purpose and in purpose. So, for me, I feel like, with the faith that he's given me to make an impact in this world, I am valuable. Now, I am certainly not perfect. I am incredibly flawed, but I never doubt my value, because I am a child of the risen Lord. And
Mm.
so, because of that, I just know that there is a reason and there is a purpose for my life.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your faith, Linda. And I know you and I both share this, that we hope that people, no matter what that looks like for them, they find their higher purpose and their higher calling, and know that they are created for greatness. And I
Yes,
say this all the time when I talk about my vision work, that you have something uniquely that you were sent here to earth to do, and nobody else can carry it out but you. And I
that's right.
think people need to be reminded of that, because unfortunately, we don't have a culture yet that starts telling kids at a very young age that they matter, that they have a purpose that's unique to them, and that we help them develop that over the years, right? Unfortunately, by the time
Oh,
we
I
become
love that, Carrie. And I will say that all of us as leaders need to look at any challenge and any opportunity in the spirit of abundance,
right,
embracing the idea that there's plenty for all of us to share, and relating to those around us, especially young people, with an open mind and an open heart.
yeah,
Grace is a force of good. And when times are challenging, it's going to require courage.
yeah,
And I think that it's that sort of quiet confidence, it's that composure that really speaks loudest to those around you. And when you have that composure, that quiet confidence in your leadership, it is contagious. And especially young people need to know that, yes, we're going to stumble, we're going to fail, we're going to experience heartache and heartbreaks and setbacks. But you have to be able to look at any challenge and any opportunity in that spirit of abundance, embracing the idea that there's plenty for everyone.
right. So good. Well, the last thing I know that you and I both agree on is, and the one thing that you mentioned early on is how much you really wanted to be a part of a community.
Yes.
And I think that was probably a big part of your vision, what drove you to get yourself out there and to become all that you are today, right? And I would agree that, 30 years of being an entrepreneur, um, I learned the skills, but the biggest thing that got me through on the days that were really hard is the associations that I had and the communities that I put myself in. And I think that is another really big point that people need to hear, because we tend to isolate, don't we? So it doesn't work very well, you all. It does not work. So Linda, I would love for you to talk to these guys about why and how you created LeadHERship, and a little bit about what that's about. And obviously we'll leave some place for people to reach out and connect with you too.
I love that. You're right, Carrie. After years and years of isolation, I really began to see the impact, the transformative power of community. When you bring leaders together who are united in trying to solve issues, overcome problems, to be able to troubleshoot and problem solve, and be able to leverage opportunities, and to be able to make a really powerful and significant impact, I tell you, that power is transformative. And
Right.
LeadHERship Global is a community for impactful, extraordinary women all around the world who are interested in really kind of unleashing their full potential. They want a confidential, supportive, and private community so that they can accelerate whatever their definition of success is. And what I see is this phenomenal global community of high performing, growth oriented leaders that are pouring into one another, that are serving as counsel. They cheer each other on, they support each other, they care for each other in a very authentic, genuine way that literally propels the members of
Right.
LeadHERship Global forward. It lifts them to the next level of success. And our focus is to help members accelerate their success by doing much of what you do, Carey. Help them define their vision, grow their leadership, expand their influence, and leave a lasting legacy. And by harnessing really the knowledge, the influence, the trust of incredibly high performing leaders all around the world, we can support their creativity. We can stimulate idea exchange. We provide resources and tools. We provide access to capital and media opportunities to accelerate personal and professional growth.
Right.
And it has been exhilarating. It has been absolutely the most privileged position I've ever been in, to see these inspirational leaders create lifelong friendships, be surrounded by people who are invested in their success. I've seen women that cheer each other on, counsel each other, support each other to greater and greater levels of success and impact. And the women find deep, meaningful, authentic, genuine relationship with other women that they admire, that they are inspired by, like you,
Yes.
Carey.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that is the biggest gift that you can be given.
So true. And the biggest gift for me, Linda, you have given me so much insight into myself. You have helped me grow as a person and professionally, and just have connected me to some amazing people. But most of all, our friendship is just the best. You are truly an inspiration to me, Linda. And I know these words are going to help so many people. So, any last thought that you want to share?
Just thank you, Carey. I feel like the courage that you have to not only share your story, but
Mm.
to help lift other leaders up, to help them find their vision, and now extending the power of what you're bringing to the world to young adults now, too. I
Right.
think it is going to be life changing and life saving,
Well,
because people do need to know that there is something greater than the trauma that they may be experiencing right now, the incredible hardships and challenges they may be experiencing right now. Over the course of an entire lifetime, this is but just a minute
right.
of hardship, which can be followed by a lifetime of purpose and meaning and incredible transformation that you're able to offer others. So you, Carey Conley, are the embodiment of that. You are the emblem of that. And I want everyone to take heart knowing your story, that that's possible for them as well.
No, thank you, Linda. It's because of relationships with you that I can do what I do. So I appreciate you being here. You are a blessing in my life. I want to thank everybody for listening to our podcast today, Moving Through and Beyond. I'm your host, Carey Conley, and I'm here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.